I'll begin with some good news. The pharmaceutical industry has been losing a lot of customers lately, mainly because of medicinal cannabis. Most people finally accept the fact that nobody went insane from a relaxing medicinal herb that definitely prevents paranoia because it's definitely relaxing. The myth of impaired concentration is outrageous, and the hate mongers would sing a different tune if they had difficulty concentrating. The myth of amotivational syndrome is also backwards. The first medical necessity motivates its users. We don't sit on the couch all day and do nothing. That is nonsense. So I I got my medicinal herb license in 2017. That was a major accomplishment. There's no legal justification to accuse me of abusing medical necessity when it's prescribed. So that was quite a milestone. Unfortunately, due to psychiatric fraud from years ago, I'm still denied better housing. I can't just choose where to reside. Years ago, Community Mental Health Affiliates, a hate group, uh, lied under oath, and a probate judge didn't penalize them for perjury. He encouraged it, he just took their word for it. I have high functioning autism and post traumatic stress disorder, not any of the nonsense the doctors at CMHA claimed I had. Um, so they lied under oath, got away with it. A conservator, a person in the state, was illegally appointed. This person, Katrina Camara, whoever, is a stranger. I've never met her. All I know is that she's a lawyer. Um, and that's how I'm stuck in the wrong area. The only way out would be if I discharged myself with nowhere to go. Granted, I'm not probated to this agency, so I can, but that's too risky because I'd be deprived of my own money because the conservator has my money. Um, in 2015, I was discharged from CMHA to Continuum of Care, and that was somewhat of an improvement. Basically, what happened was CMHA had some Dr. Noonan write a physician's emergency certificate when there was no emergency. I was forced into Connecticut Valley Hospital, but not one of the worst parts of it, not Whiting Forensic Services that was all over the news because of the torture. Um, and I was rotting in there simply because there's laws against discharging the homeless. It's not like they could just discharge me with nowhere to go. That's illegal. So I lost over 4 months of my life because of that. Everybody working there knew that CMHA was lying. They didn't believe one word of it. They said themselves, no risk factors identified. That was an accomplishment. They told me that I wouldn't have to worry about the falsified medical records anymore and that I could just leave the past behind as if they had corrected it. That's not the case. They could have easily been mistaken. I don't know. But when I had an infection in my wisdom teeth, I got harassed about a misdiagnosis from 2005. Dentistry has nothing to do with psychiatry, and I was quite flabbergasted. In fact, my jaw dropped. Um, so, yeah, the misdiagnosis from 2005 is still in the records. Before 2005, uh, I was considered gifted and talented, a savant, on the highest functioning end of the autism spectrum. Nobody really thought it was that big of a deal. I just didn't react well to bullying. I was an easy target for bullies because I was scrawny and nerdy and had autism and whatnot. So I got kicked out of public school in fifth grade. Uh, I was forced into the Wheeler Clinic. I was forcibly drugged. I was thrown in detention for being forced to sleep in class. I would have I would have gotten much better grades if I had been allowed to stay awake. My grades didn't reflect my abilities like at all. I was usually asleep. I finally graduated in 2005. Uh, the doctor at the clinic, Dr. Miller, wouldn't simply taper the pharmaceuticals gradually enough to avoid the withdrawal symptoms. So I got forced into the hospital, forced into community mental health affiliates. From 2005 to 2015, my post-traumatic stress disorder kept getting worse, not only because every time the prescribers refused to taper the pharmaceuticals, I got locked up over withdrawal symptoms, but also because they were writing physicians' emergency certificates for literally no reason. That happened at least a few times. Um, and Dr. Jeffrey Shelton of Bristol, Connecticut, is known for that. He's not in CMHA, but he sends people through the revolving door all the time. He sends them to the hospital for no reason. They get discharged, then he sends them right back in, and he somehow still gets away with it. In 2005, Dr. Balcunas misdiagnosed me without even a questionnaire. I wasn't evaluated. That's a misconception. Psychiatrists don't usually evaluate anyone. In most cases, they just arbitrarily stamp labels on people based upon literally nothing. The examination doesn't usually happen. So, for whatever reason, Balcunas has a penchant for labels such as bipolar or schizoaffective or whatever, schizophrenic, schizo this, schizo that. He didn't care that other doctors before him who actually knew me to at least some degree had never claimed that. So, uh, yeah, Balcunas thought that herb would somehow interfere with medicine, despite that it is medical necessity. So he tried to coerce me. He said I'd get locked up, and he said it's going to make your medicine not work. That's definitely not true. So I, I got forced into CMHA in 2005. I got out of it a while after that. And then Bristol Hospital Counseling Center continued this nonsense. I was right the whole time. All they would have to do is taper the pharmaceuticals. Michael Edward Balcunas of New Britain General Hospital is among the main problems because other doctors were reading the falsified medical records with his lies, and they didn't question that. They figured he wouldn't lie. They figured it must be true because a doctor said so. So as of now, I'm rotting in this house in Wethersfield, Connecticut. I had been traumatized in this house to extremes, and it's not like it's water under the bridge. I was denied a reimbursement for my belongings that had been thrown out. I was forced to share a house with a bully, Mike Inigo, who pulled down his pants to indecently expose himself and got away with it. He waited for me at the park. He waited for me at the gazebo at a public park that I frequent. He's literally a stalker. He got away with it. He would keep sending himself to Hartford Hospital, and he would be discharged literally the next day. Like the next morning, he'd be back to harass me again. The staff at Hartford Hospital are afraid of him because he pulls the panic alarm and fights the staff. They could have sent him to a more secure facility. Hartford Hospital has been known to send people to the Institute of Living, where the prisoners are chained to beds and raped by the staff and whatnot. But for whatever reason, they're too afraid of Mike Inigo to lock him up. Not that anybody should be subjected to that. That's not what I meant. Nobody deserves torture. It's really that simple. I obviously did nothing to deserve what nobody deserved. What nobody deserves. I've never harmed anybody. I'm an easy target because I'm mellow, docile, and passive. Psychiatry is preying upon easy targets. It's taking advantage of nice people. Granted, I'm not presuming that all psychiatrists are that terrible, or even that that's what always happens, but it happens. I've experienced this many times. Crooked doctors and other crooked staff will just point fingers at easy targets and claim they have symptoms they don't have. It's denigrating to tell people they're sick when they're not. Only bullies tell people they have symptoms they don't have. They're degrading these people they know nothing about. wow, this is difficult to talk about. In any event, they shift the blame away from themselves. Something's obviously wrong with the kind of people who work at these facilities. They get their kicks harming people. I didn't consent to their sadism, I was violated. Uh, and I'm gradually rising above all that trauma from my past. Uh, I remain mellow most of the time. Despite all the abuse inflicted upon me, I don't get vengeful. I don't retaliate. I'd like some closure, but it's not the same thing as revenge. It's not like I was driven down a dark path or anything like that. I mean, that would make some sense if it happened, but it didn't. And medicinal herb was what kept me calm, cool, and collected throughout this entire ordeal. When I was prescribed pharmaceuticals that impaired concentration, I had to smoke more herb to clear my head so I could choose my own thoughts, the only way to focus. When I was prescribed pharmaceuticals that caused depression, same thing. I smoked herb to defeat depression. And of course, the drug pushers wouldn't accept any responsibility for their actions. They just blamed herb as if it was causing the problems it was solving. And now that Connecticut has re-legalized medicinal herb, and that's been the case since 2012, there ought to be a crackdown on those doctors and APRNs and whatnot. Herb doesn't cause brain damage. Xanax causes brain damage and deadly withdrawal symptoms. Suzanne Wargo thought the first medical necessity somehow has an underworld. I'm like, what? For real? An underworld? I tried educating that person who said, don't tell me about the marijuana underworld. And then she prescribed the Xanax that almost killed me. I wasn't warned about the severity of the deadly withdrawal symptoms. I mean, it's common knowledge, but the degree of it wasn't explained. Nobody told me if I misplaced the pill bottle, I could have a seizure from withdrawing. The junkie staff at Bristol Hospital said the cause of the seizure was undetermined. Yeah, right. And they locked me up for that. They get an easy fix by working at a detoxification ward. Their motto is, do as we say, not as we do. They pretend they're infested with opiophobia, despite that they abuse those narcotics themselves. They preach sobriety while they're nodding off and talking with their eyes closed. They keep the drugs for themselves. The junkie staff were eating Dunkin' Donuts right in front of the prisoners, and we were given nothing but hospital food. I don't do heroin or any of that or anything even remotely similar to it. In fact, I also don't even drink. I have nothing to do with detox. That doesn't make any sense. But granted, that's not why I was there. It's also a psychiatric ward, and I was withdrawing from pharmaceuticals. So they locked me up over withdrawal symptoms. They wouldn't admit it was withdrawal symptoms. They tried claiming that's how I would be if I were unmedicated, if one could call it that. So, as of now, I'm still rotting in this house. I was traumatized in, and the same unqualified staff are still here. Continuum of care doesn't require any certifications. Nobody has to be qualified for this so-called job. It's not work at all. The whole roster of staff stayed in the office the whole time I was being harassed by Mike and Ego. And this guy Norman, who still works here, was literally talking about guns, and he still got away with it. He said, "Who's bullying you? I don't see anybody bullying you." And that's because he was in the office. So I told him, Mike and Ego is bullying me again. Why aren't you doing your job? How do you get paid for this? And he's like, what, do you expect me to guard you with an AK-47? And he still got away with it. Unbelievable. Because the staff refused to help, I had to document what the bully did to me myself. And of course, he was gaslighting me. He would bully me, and then I would press record after he had already been bullying me, and he would play the victim and make it look like it was the opposite of what it was. And now the staff do the same thing. Every time they bully me, they accuse me of bullying them. So they're still getting away with it. No matter what they do, they still get their easy paycheck. The manager of this house, Leanne Farley, shouldn't get away with it, and neither should any of them. If I could report this to someone above Leanne, it would trickle down to Leanne's. That's pointless. It's pointless to file a grievance because it'd be swept under the rug. Of course, it'd be swept under the rug. It's ridiculous, like trying to complain to the Internal Affairs Division of a police department. They don't investigate themselves. That's nonsense. You know, whether it's FBI agents or whatever, if it's an internal investigation, it doesn't count. Why would that not be understood? Restaurants don't do the health inspections themselves. So yeah, there's how it is now. I'm terrified in this house because every time the staff bully me, they get away with it. It's very terrifying. I'm living in fear. That is my money paying the rent. If I could get a break from this house, that would help. I need a therapeutic setting. This is just nonsense, and most people wouldn't even believe it. It's not impossible, but it might seem implausible to most. I'm not even accused of any crime. This has nothing to do with criminal court. It was probate court, and a lot of people simply don't comprehend that these atrocities really do happen to good and innocent people. And the reign of terror hasn't ended. The Department of Public Health is giving me the runaround, telling me the conservator has to put her signature on it before they can investigate. She said no problem, she'll sign off on it, and somehow there's still no investigation. The Department of Public Health is still procrastinating. Dr. John A. Nazarian of Community Mental Health Affiliates had the idea to lie under oaths so that there'd be a conservator, a person, and a state. That's how he got his revenge, because he couldn't fool me. I know the first medical necessity still prevents paranoia because it's still relaxing. His lies didn't work on me. So he was infuriated. Michael Higgison, an APRN, also wouldn't taper the pharmaceuticals. He arbitrarily accused me of a psychotic disorder. That's ridiculous. Dr. Jeffrey Shelton also said that nonsense. I'm like, what are you talking about? He doesn't know my history. He was prejudging me based only upon falsified medical records. He read the records before he met me, and then he tried telling me about my history that he knows nothing about. So despite that the misdiagnosis is still in the records, it's not current. Anybody who has access to the medical records would see the misdiagnosis first, and that'd probably be all they'd see. But nobody who has anything to do with me now still gives that any credence. Just so this video won't be over 20 minutes long, I just want it known that there should be a crackdown on psychiatric fraud. There won't be any investigation until somebody important says there should be an investigation. I've contacted senators and the governor about this, and it's taking too long. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's like reapplying for disability money, and then reapplying again and again. Something will eventually be done about this, and I hope I'll have some closure.